Good morning. Welcome to the July 24th meeting of the CSU Board of Trustees. And Chair Simon, will you please convene the Committee on Collective Bargaining?
Thank you, and good morning. Thank you, Chair Day, for a great meeting yesterday. Will the Committee on Collective Bargaining please come to order? We do have members here from the public who have gathered here to speak to us today. I have, it looks like 6 members of the public who wish to speak to us this morning. And what I'll do is I will call you all. I'll call you by threes, and if you can come to the microphone, you have 3 minutes each. And I definitely don't want to cut you off, but I want to make sure that there's time for everyone. So if you can try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, that would be great. Let's start. And if I mispronounce your name, please pronounce it correctly so we can correct it for the record. Leland Wessel, Imogen Aboykin, and Rocky Sanchez. I know that I didn't do well with all 3 of those names probably. So Leland, please. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. And you did fine with my name. Thank you. I'm Dr. Lee Wessel, a physician with over 25 years of service at SDSU and a Unit 1 representative. We in Unit 1, as well as our medical colleagues in Unit 2, feel strongly about the major gap in malpractice coverage stemming from Title IX complaints. After reviewing the audit conclusions, it's clear that the CSU has the funds to address the malpractice coverage gap easily and completely. Several years ago, a Title IX complaint was made against one of our physicians at SDSU. While the complaint was being investigated, the physician was put on leave. He was told that the university would not represent him, as doing so would be a conflict of interest, since the Title IX officer conducting the investigation works for the university. Please note that he was not on administrative leave. Rather, he was told to use his personal sick leave. The complaint was eventually found to have no merit, but in the meantime, months later, he spent over $10,000 of his personal money in legal fees and used over 200 hours of paid sick time. Further, the complaint was made also to the Medical Board of California. Once again, the university refused to provide representation for him before his licensing board, and therefore he incurred out-of-pocket expenses to pay for his defense. To date, he has not been reimbursed for his legal fees, nor credited back his sick time that was expended, let alone any consideration for the mental anguish he experienced over months and months while he waited for this nightmare to come to a conclusion. When physicians, dentists, optometrists, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, registered nurses, and LVNs are hired, we are told we have full malpractice coverage, that we are indeed indemnified by the state of California. There's no mention of this enormous and unconscionable gap created by Title IX complaints, which can be made against any one of us. Please note that all of the job descriptions mentioned have to see patients in various states of undress and/or have to touch patients' bodies, whether it's doing a genital exam as a provider, leaning closely over a patient in a dental or eye exam chair, or as nursing staff do, performing an EKG on a patient with a bare torso, or giving injections into bare buttocks. All of us are at much higher risk of complaints than other staff and faculty on campus just in the course of discharging our normal duties. Yet we are left to fend for ourselves. I implore all of you, Chancellor White, trustees, and campus presidents in attendance today to address this gross oversight fully, completely, and expeditiously, and you might start by making this physician whole. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your comments, Dr. Wessel. Our next speaker is Edgman. And he is not here. So we're going to, oh, are you here? Okay. Well, so if he comes back while we're still in public comment, we will add him back to the roll. Rocky Sanchez with CUSU. Good morning, Rocky.
Good morning. Good morning, Chancellor White, Board of Trustees, campus presidents, brothers and sisters. I'm Rocky Sanchez, VP for Representation, CSUEU, and I hail from Cal Poly Pomona. I'm here to speak in regards to the ratification for Bargaining Unit 14 at CSU Monterey Bay. I hope that you all vote in terms of ratification. Now I'm going to digress a bit from bargaining, Unit 14. And that is in regards to that we had been bargaining for a system-wide camera policy, and we had reached impasse. However, when I was up at Monterey Bay looking at security cameras for the North Salinas campus or satellite campus, we wound up getting handed the system-wide policy and wanting to bargain to try to circumvent what we were going through system-wide. Bargaining, I believe, in bad faith by bringing that system-wide policy over to the campus. Was CSU planning on bargaining the system-wide policy campus by campus because we had reached an impasse? You need to follow the rules, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you so much for your comments. Our next speaker is Tessie Reese. Oh, I'm sorry. Edmund, you're here. Thank you so much.
Hello,
Please,
thank you.
good morning.
My name is Ejmin Alkobian, and I'm here to share my personal opinion. Chancellor White, you should resign, and you are incompetent. And the collective bargaining, you have been hoarding money, and you've been causing unnecessary stress on the student and the faculty. And faculty are the ones that actually change the student's life. Faculty and staff are the ones that actually impact the student's life. And because of your unintelligent actions, you have decided for years to not properly pay them for their efforts. So you have no case against, especially with the report, you have no case against not giving in to what they're asking this year. And I strongly encourage the board to do that. And I believe strongly you as a board should not have the right to set a certain amount for reserves. That should be a mandate from the state, from the legislature. You're just an agency following, and you've been given powers to operate under the jurisdiction of the state. What if tomorrow Chancellor White wakes up and decides instead of $1.5 billion, he wants to have $10 billion reserves? And as you can see, Board of Trustees blindly follows him. That's wrong. And I demand that the board fully comply with the request of the staff and the faculty. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker would be Tessie Reese. Good morning.
Good morning, Tessie Reese, Unit 2 Chair from San Diego State for CSUEU. Yesterday, there was a lot of emotion on our side and emotion with the trustee sides regarding the audit. Part of the emotion on at least my side was a 21-year dedicated employee who has stood by the CSU, who went through furloughs, who went through 7 years of no raises, and then to find an audit that came out and basically said tuition hikes to students and furlough salary savings were some of the monies that were used to start this rainy day fund, surplus, reserves, whatever is necessary for the Board of Trustees to have done. That lack of transparency is where the emotion comes from, at least for me, for a staff member of 21 years who sacrificed, who sat at the table, quite frankly, in 2009 and bargained that agreement. So I do understand the emotion that came yesterday. And when we go to next year's bargaining, I invite all of you trustees and the trustee yesterday who put the union on notice regarding parking fees. Thank you, because that's just one more organizing tool we will use in our arsenal of 16,000 employees who will come to the table next year and will bargain in good faith as we always do. And I just pulled up my contract. And quite frankly, you are our employer, the trustees of the CSU. We bargain with you. Doesn't matter who you send to the table to bargain with us, we bargain with you. You are our employers. Please treat us with dignity and respect, not only here in this audience, but when we come to the table to bargain with you next year. And I invite every one of you trustees and Chancellor White to come to bargaining next year so you can see what we do on behalf of the units that we represent. We are 16,000 strong employees who are dedicated, loyal, and have used decades of employment to you, the employer. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your words. Thank you. Our next speaker, Rocky Sanchez. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Neil Jacklin. I apologize. Neil Jacklin. And the last speaker will be Martin Briner.
Good morning, Board of Trustees, Chancellor White, campus presidents, and guests. I'd like to suggest that we read our collective bargaining agreement as like a book. It tells a story of an organization that works hard to select its employees, develops and promotes them in an effort to retain well-informed and stable workforce. Our organization does this because maintaining a highly competent staff resource based on knowledge and experience will continue to deliver and serve the needs of our students. And if you follow the storyline further, it leads you to a place where staff are dedicated to the university's mission of student success. Our problem in the implementation of this contract has been watered down in a series of transactions where we lose sight of the actual story that was written for all of us. In order for us to move forward as an organization, we need to look at the ways we manage, develop, and promote our employees for the good of our organization and our students. Thank you. The end.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brenner? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Martin Brenner, CSUEU Unit 9 Vice Chair from CSU Long Beach, the newly minted Sharks. I'd like to address the Chancellor, the Board of Trustees, and the campus presidents. I have some questions for you. How do I, as a member of the employee union bargaining team, negotiate the next contract with a partner that sees no ethical dilemma in exploiting a contract provision made in good faith to completely circumvent employee rights? The campus presidents are allowed to appoint positions as temporary or permanent status. One would think that these terms would be self-explanatory. Apparently on my campus and many others, but thankfully not all, the term temporary and permanent are not self-explanatory. On these campuses, the vast majority of representative staff recruitments are for temporary positions. On my campus, temporary really means an employee who is fulfilling a continuing need, but is hired in such a way that they have no rights for 4 years. Not rights under the collective bargaining agreement, not many state and federal protections, pretty much no rights at all. So I ask you, is it ethical to hire the majority of your continuing workforces on temporary contracts? We negotiated a temporary status employee provision so temporary needs can be met, not so your campus hiring authorities can wholesale circumvent the agreement provisions and employment laws. Next question. Do you think that recruiting temporary positions gets you the same applicant pool that a permanent status employee does? Is this a prudent way to spend taxpayer money? The union has asked Human Resources on my campus to report on the percentage of temporary hires that were hired as a result of temporary funding or a grant or a special project. That's a legitimate need for temporary employees. You know what the answer we received was? HR doesn't because they don't track this. The hiring status of positions made by the hiring manager is made by the hiring manager with no guidance from the president who sits before you today or Human Resources. We inquired, do you think that this 4-year de facto at-will employee status is ethical? The response was, the contract allows this. So is this the standard of ethics that the campus, my campus, and the CSU should represent? If it's not outlawed, is it something we're going to pursue as a best practice without limits? Should we be advising our employees that this should be the way we behave in the workplace as well? Or should we seek the highest levels of service of standards and ethics? I submit to you today that our representative employees work to a higher standard, and I respectfully ask that you would instruct your presidents, your managers, to do so as well. Do the right thing, act ethically, hire permanent employees in permanent positions. You will create a workforce that far exceeds the bare minimums required by our contract and law, the workforce that our students, our campus community, and state taxpayers deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I want to thank all the members who spoke today and for this committee for your time, for the travel miles, for your research and preparing your talks, your ideas, your opinions. This is the forum, and your words are heard. Now it is time for the committee to consider today's consent agenda. Do we have any committee members who wish to remove any of the items from the consent agenda for further discussion? Hearing no request, are there objections in the approval of the consent agenda? Hearing none, well then let's move. There's no request made. And so I think we're going to vote, the members of the committee, to move the consent agenda. Let me make sure my script is on point. Okay, let's see, give me a second. Is there a motion to move
If
the
there are no
consent agenda?
objections, you could just consider the consent agenda approved.
Excellent. Is there a motion to move the consent agenda?
So moved.
All right, let's vote. Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, members of the committee. I'm actually going to turn it over to our Vice Chancellor of Human Resources for the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Simon. We have one action item on the agenda today. The action item is the ratification of the successor collective bargaining agreement for Unit 14, the American Language and Culture Program Instructors, CSU Monterey Bay. This agreement will run for 3 years until June 30th, 2022. Salaries will be increased by 3% effective July 1st, and they will be salary reopeners for fiscal years 2020, 2021, and fiscal year 2021-22. The rest of the agreement remains as status quo. Trustee Simon, that concludes my presentation. I now welcome any questions or discussions from the board.
Are there any questions from the committee, from the board? Well, seeing none, thank you for the presentation. The ratification of this item of the successor collective bargaining agreement and bargaining unit 14, American Language and Culture Program Instructor, CSU Monterey Bay, is an action item before the Committee on Collective Bargaining. Only committee members may vote at this time. If there is no discussion on this item, may I have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Well, this item is approved. Thank you so much for the presentation and for the work. Chair Day, this concludes the business of the Committee on Collective Bargaining. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Simon. Chair Farrar, will you please convene the Committee on University and